The story begins in 1898 in the Montana Territory. At that time, the name Colton Briggs was rarely heard. Yet in the past, he had been the deadliest gunslinger who ever lived. However, thanks to the influence of his wife, Ruth, Colton left behind his dark past. He now lived in peace, tending a farm, running a small store, and devoting himself entirely to his family. Most importantly, he was responsible for raising his 12-year-old daughter, Brooke.
You're a good mother. Anyone can see that.
One morning, Ruth asked Colton to take Brooke to school. At first, Colton felt reluctant, believing such things were not a man's duty. But Ruth insisted that it would be a good opportunity for father and daughter to bond. Eventually, Colton agreed to his wife's request.
We should have taken the horse.
No.
On their way to school, Brooke tried to persuade her father to stop so she could ride a horse, but Colton refused, saying they had no time to play around. When they arrived, it turned out class had been canceled because the teacher was sick. Colton initially wanted Brooke to walk home alone, but she reminded him that her mother never allowed her to do that. So Colton brought his daughter along to the store. While they were there, a customer named Jeffries came in. He was known as a talkative, irritating man. Colton tried to hold back his annoyance and asked what he needed. Jeffries finally asked for a sack of flour, so Colton went upstairs to get it. At that moment, Jeffries was tempted to steal some candy. He did not realize Brooke was watching him. The girl said nothing, but her gaze made Jeffries aware he had been caught. Embarrassed, he returned the candy and begged Brooke to keep his act a secret before leaving with his head hung low.
Hope to see you at the luncheon on Sunday.
Afterward, Brooke immediately told her father everything, even mentioning the dirt stain on Jeffries' hand as proof. Meanwhile, at their home, peace suddenly shattered.
Pardon me, ma'am.
Ruth was startled by the arrival of 4 strangers led by James McAllister. James politely introduced himself, pretending to ask for directions. Cautious yet polite, Ruth showed the way, but she began to sense something was wrong. When the men advanced toward her, she tried to escape to the stables.
My husband will be along any minute, so he might even be able to show you the way himself.
During the chaos, one man named Eustace grew nervous and suggested they leave before the local marshal noticed anything. But Boots, another member, reassured him it was not yet time to back down. Ruth managed to mount a horse to flee, but James was faster. He shot the animal, making it collapse and throwing Ruth to the ground. She was captured. At that moment, James noticed an engraving of the name Colton Briggs on a stall wall. He asked if Ruth was Colton's wife. Upon hearing her answer, James said he knew the name and had an old debt to settle with him. The situation became clear. Ruth was in grave danger.
You boys are in a world. You boys have woke up the devil.
Later, Colton and Brooke returned home. They were shocked to find strangers swarming their property. Marshal Frank Jurett approached, surprised to learn that Colton Briggs, the legendary gunslinger, now lived as a family man. With heavy heart,
Where's Ruth? Briggs?
the marshal delivered the terrible news that Ruth had been murdered by those men. Colton was devastated with grief. He refused anyone's help and mourned alone at Ruth's grave. During this time, Jarrett tried to comfort Brooke by telling her about her father's past. He said Colton was once the coldest and cruelest man he had ever known, but Ruth had softened his heart. In a quiet voice, Brooke said she had never even seen her father raise a gun and asked if he could still be a good man without her mother. Jarrett stayed silent, unable to answer. After the funeral, Colton returned alone to his wife's grave. Jarrett followed and warned him not to let Brooke see the horrifying scene inside the stable. Colton asked who the men responsible were, and what the next step would be. Jarrett refused to answer, saying the world would be safer if the old Colton Briggs stayed buried in the past. But Colton insisted that he was still a father and vowed to hunt down those responsible to exact revenge.
Around killing other folks. That ain't the world anymore. We got laws, we got due process. We'll catch them, we will take them to trial, and they will hang.
When everyone was gone, Colton entered the stable alone. There he found Ruth's bloody handprint. He followed the trail until he discovered a message written in blood on the wall. "I still owe you." That night, consumed by a storm of emotions, Colton opened an old box and took out his pistol. He sat in silence, lost in confusion, and unconsciously pointed the weapon at his sleeping daughter. At that moment, Brooke stirred in her sleep and mumbled faintly as if asking whether her mother would approve of her father aiming a gun at her. Colton snapped back to his senses, lowered the weapon, and the girl drifted back into slumber. A while later, he woke Brooke and told her to get ready to leave. Before departing from the house and stable, Colton burned it all down, leaving his past behind in the flames. The next morning, while riding, Brooke asked why her father destroyed their home and belongings. Colton firmly replied there was no going back, but promised that once everything was over, he would build a new life for them and replace what had been lost in the fire. Brooke answered with a single painful word, her mother's name. Later, during a rest stop, Colton explained their new routine. They would eat and sleep for 30 minutes every 4 hours. Brooke protested, saying such a method would only help their pursuers. Colton coldly insisted that chasing would be pointless if they were exhausted or their horses too weak. Meanwhile, Marshal Jarrett continued investigating. He observed Brooke's behavior and noted she showed no emotion after her mother's death. His deputy, Mark, suggested perhaps the girl was still in shock or did not fully understand what had happened. Elsewhere, James McAllister and his gang set up an ambush on a caravan passing through the hills. Believing Colton was among them, they opened fire but ended up killing innocent people.
I'm out of here. She didn't shoot the marshal. You see Briggs?
Sure, boss, I don't know what he looks like.
Furious, James ordered his men to be more careful and make sure they recognized Colton when they found him. Then he ordered a retreat. Later at night, Colton woke Brooke, saying he had heard gunshots from the canyon about 10 minutes earlier. Brooke asked why he had not woken her sooner, but Colton calmly replied there was no rush and they would soon find out. At the bandits' camp, James lost his temper and struck Boots for firing too early. His plan had been to eliminate the marshal first, but the careless act had let the marshal survive. Soon, Colton spotted a rider approaching. He prepared to shoot the horse to stop the rider. Brooke, frightened, begged him not to, reminding him it could be just an officer and that her mother would never approve such an act. Colton hesitated, and Brooke asked if there was no other way. Reluctantly, Colton changed his plan. He told Brooke to fake cry to distract the rider. Nervous, she admitted she did not know how. Colton sternly insisted she had to learn if she wanted to survive in this world. The girl struggled, but eventually forced out a fake, emotionless cry. The rider turned out to be Mark, the marshal's deputy, who was injured. Colton quickly disarmed him and used him as bait. Soon, they encountered Marshal Jarrett and another deputy named Greg, who was also wounded. With a pistol in hand, Brooke tried to mimic her father and ordered Greg to surrender his weapon. Greg refused and even threatened her. At that moment, Brooke shocked everyone. She stomped on Greg's wounded foot, forcing him to drop his gun, which she immediately picked up. After freeing his men, Marshal Jarrett confronted Colton. He said he understood his pain, but warned that threatening or attacking a U.S. Marshal was a serious crime. Colton coldly reminded him that he had withheld the names of those responsible. Jarrett sternly declared that if harm came to his men, he would hunt Colton down and see him hang. Tension rose as Colton pressed Mark harder, nearly torturing him, until Jarrett was forced to reveal the truth.
Like you hunted down the man who killed my wife?
James McAllister!
Finally, he admitted the killers were led by James McAllister and 3 others. Rumors spread that James had promised a great treasure hidden in a safe if they managed to escape Power County Prison. Now the group was heading to Colorado, to the town of Santa Rosa, where James also mentioned a girl. Meanwhile, Colton used the opportunity to teach Brooke. He treated Mark's gunshot wound in front of her, extracting the bullet and cauterizing it with a hot iron. He explained that the bullet had poisoned the man's body. The stench made Brooke wince, and to lighten the mood, she remarked the smell reminded her of her mother's rabbit stew, even saying it made her hungry.
If I get to Santa Rosa and there's no James McAllister, I will kill you before you even see me. We're taking your guns and your horse.
Leave me a horse, Briggs. You can't take my horse.
I'll leave your horse tied up in Santa Rosa.
Their journey continued as they rode borrowed horses through the mountains. Colton emphasized to his daughter that he was not a thief. He planned to return the animals by leaving them in Santa Rosa before continuing on. Meanwhile, James kept his word and led his men to where the safe was buried. When they opened it, they found it full of Mexican money. The men grew angry and accused him of betrayal, but James remained calm. He raised his pistol and said that if he truly intended to cheat them, they would already be dead. He ordered them to stay quiet for a full year and assured them the money was enough to let them live in luxury. Boots took the chance to ask about Colton Briggs, but James coldly replied they did not need to look for him because Briggs would come to them. With a chilling smile, he said it was all part of his plan. Upon arriving in Santa Rosa, the gang settled in the town. Stens voiced concern the local sheriff might find out, but James reassured them he had cut the telegraph lines. That would give him 4 days before news spread. He then ordered them to take turns keeping watch every 4 hours. That night, while resting, Brooke used the quiet moment to ask her father if he had truly changed after meeting Ruth. Colton admitted he used to be cold, fearless, and emotionless. He had not shed a single tear, even when his own mother was buried. But everything changed when he met Ruth. For the first time, he felt fear. Fear of losing her and fear of not being loved. It was also the first time he truly loved someone. Brooke listened silently, then confessed that when her mother died, she felt nothing, only emptiness inside. Colton comforted her, saying part of him had also died with Ruth, and the pain would never fully fade. When Brooke asked who James McAllister really was, Colton admitted he did not know him. Shortly after, Brooke asked him to teach her how to use a gun. Colton agreed. The next day, Brooke began practicing with her father's rifle, but she failed to hit any target.
Now remember, keep your left eye closed. Time it so your breath ends just as you line up your shot with your whole hand. Remember to squeeze, don't pull.
Outside Santa Rosa, Colton waited on the only road leading into town. He knew James was watching and that sooner or later one of his men would recognize him. Realizing the danger, Brooke suggested she go instead since no one knew her. Her father accepted the idea and gave her instructions. On horseback, Brooke rode to Santa Rosa. There she went into a shop, bought a few simple items, and discreetly asked if any riders had recently passed through. But when she came out, James and his men were waiting. They recognized her and quickly brought her into the main hall.
Little girl we saw the other morning.
Still no sign of him. He'll be around soon enough, I suspect.
There, James offered her food, but she refused. He then ordered Boots and Stens to prepare an ambush for Colton. At this point, James decided to share part of his story. 20 years earlier, his father, Walter McAllister, a notorious outlaw, had been executed by Colton Briggs before his very eyes. That moment planted deep hatred in James's heart since childhood. He blamed Colton for his father's death and swore one day he would have his revenge. When James finally found Colton, he deliberately targeted his family. By killing Ruth, he wanted Colton to feel the same agony of losing a loved one that he had endured as a boy. While talking to Brooke, James filled the safe with newspapers to trick everyone. The real money he hid inside a box of alfajors, far from his gang's sight. Outside, Big Mike spotted Colton approaching and hid in a building, but Colton outsmarted him, used him as bait, and killed him silently.
Oh, he's here! Oh, God, mister, please don't kill him! He's here!
He then faced Boots and killed him too, though not without injury. Eustace managed to shoot Colton in the leg. Inside the hall, James held Brooke's hand while pointing a gun at her. Eustace, frustrated at failing to finish Colton, bitterly admitted his shot had only grazed him. He then sent 2 more men to hunt Colton, but both were swiftly killed by the gunslinger. Soon, Colton appeared and challenged James to settle things directly. But James still held Brooke hostage, raising the tension. Wounded, Colton stepped out of hiding to confront him. James mocked him, asking if he remembered the past. Colton replied that he did not, enraging James further. James declared there were only 2 choices. Colton could shoot, risking his daughter's life, or face his fate alone. Colton made his decision. He shot Stens and freed Brooke. In that moment, James reacted quickly and shot Colton in the chest. As James boasted of taking down the legendary gunslinger, Brooke picked up her father's fallen pistol and shot James, hitting his chest, then finished him with a shot to the head.
You hear that, Daddy? I killed him.
In his final moments, Colton handed Brooke a photo of Ruth and told her mother would always be with her. Devastated, the girl wept over her father's body. Soon after, Marshal Jarrett arrived with his men to collect the dead. They found a fake safe in the hall and believed they had secured the treasure, unaware the real money was still hidden in the alfajor's box. Out of pity for the grieving girl, Jarrett suggested letting the world believe Colton died a hero who was gunned down by the gang. He also took the money he found, never realizing the true fortune remained undiscovered. Silently, Brooke rode off on her horse. Before leaving completely, she discreetly took the alfajors James had hidden. Seeing it in her hands, she smiled, now holding control over what remained of the bloody legacy. From a story of the old way, we learn that a dark past never truly disappears, and every decision leaves a trace.